Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel MK's Tech Talks. So in this YouTube channel, you can find one playlist with the name DevOps Training Series 0 to Hero. So in this playlist, you can see the different topics like Linux, Git, Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, Ansible, Terraform, and AWS Cloud from basic to advanced concepts with real-time scenarios. So even if you don't know anything about DevOps, no need to bother. So just to follow this playlist, so you can become DevOps engineer in 2 months. So please like, share, and subscribe my YouTube channel. So MKS Tech Talks. Thank you.
And we have Jenkins home directory, right? So what is the Jenkins home directory? So if you see here, so valid Jenkins is the Jenkins home directory. So now try to access the Jenkins home directory. So cd valid Jenkins. Okay, so in Jenkins home directory, you can see many files and directories related to the Jenkins. So out of this, jobs folder is very important. Okay, so whenever we create any project, there will be a separate folder will be created with the project name in the jobs directory. So if you remember in the previous session, we created one project, right? Now check whether the project is reflected in jobs directory or not. So cd jobs, check ls. You see, so this is the project we created, my project one. Okay, so now it is getting reflected. So like that, how many projects we have, all the projects will be reflected under jobs directory. Okay, so now connected to our Jenkins UI. So how can we connect it to Jenkins UI? We have to use public IP address and the Jenkins port. What is the Jenkins port? 8080. Okay.
8080.
So log in with admin credentials. So now this is the dashboard. Okay, so we have my project one created. So this project created in the previous session, right? The same thing is getting reflected in the jobs directory also. On that jobs directory, you can see my project one. So now go to the my project one, cd my project one. So check ls. So you see, so we have builds. So if we have any builds for this particular project, so that builds details will be available under builds folder, and we can see config.xml file. So this config.xml file shows the project configuration. Means, so in our project, what is the source code we used? What are the commands we used? Okay, what are the goals we defined? So everything will be available under config.xml file. Like so, so like this for every project, whenever we create any project, right? So for every project, there will be one config.xml file available. Okay, so this config.xml file will have all the project details. So as of now, we didn't perform any configuration changes in our project. Okay, so no configuration changes we did. No, just we created the project. Okay, so for now here, if you see, try to access this config.xml file. So we have config.xml file. So cat config.xml file. As of now, no information is there. This is the raw data. We don't have anything regarding our project. Okay, so so nothing is there here. Okay, so means because still we didn't added any configuration changes in our project. If we do any changes, that changes will be reflected under config.xml file. So now go to the project. So here this is the project, right? Click on the project. So this is the freestyle project we created, and in this project we can see different options. Okay, so we have to what we have to do is we have to provide the required configuration for our project. So it depends on our requirement. So it is not necessary to fill all the details. So whatever the configuration we need, we can define only that thing. Okay, so if we want to change the configuration of the project, so on the left side you can see configure. Okay, you can see configure option. Click on configure. So now what we are trying to do is we are trying to change the so we are trying to provide some configuration for our project. As here we can see different options. So what are the options we have? So here discard old builds. So what it represent? So it represent if we have old builds for our project, we can discard. So if you select this, it will we have to provide on which basis we have to discard the builds. Okay, so on which basis? Okay, so max number of builds, how many builds we can keep? Okay, so these details we have to provide. And GitHub project means, so if we are taking the source code from any GitHub, so that project URL we have to provide. Okay, and this project is parameterized, means if you want to pass the parameters at the runtime of the project, we can select this. Okay, so these options we'll clearly see in the coming sessions. Okay, and execute concurrent builds. So means if we want to trigger the parallel builds, we can select this execute concurrent builds. So these are the different options we have under general section. Similarly, the next section is source code management. Under source code management, so we have to define from which SCM tool we are going to take the source code. Okay, if we are not going to take any source code, then we can define none. And if we are going to take the source code from Git or Bitbucket or any other SCM tool, so that tool we have to select here. Okay, so as we install the Git plugin, we are able to see Git option. So if you want to see, sorry. So if you want to see any other SCM tool option, right? So we have to select that particular what we have to do is, so we have to first of all install that SCM plugin. Okay, we have to install the SCM plugin. After installing the SCM plugin only, we can see that option. So why we are seeing Git here? Because Git plugin is already installed. Okay, so by default Git plugin got installed. That is the reason why we can see Git option. Similarly, if we need Bitbucket, we have to install the Bitbucket plugin. Once we install Bitbucket plugin, we can see Bitbucket option here. You can see Bitbucket option. Okay, so so under source code management section, we have to decide from which source code management tool we are going to get the source code. So if we are using Git, okay, so we have to provide the repository URL, GitHub repository URL. Okay, from which GitHub repository URL we are trying to uh, pull the code. Okay, so that URL details we have to provide. Okay, so so we'll see how can we pull the code from our SCM repository Jenkins in the coming sessions. So after this, we have triggers. So under triggers, it will set up automated actions that start our builds based on some specific conditions. Okay, so like whenever there is a code change or whenever there is a scheduled time happen, at that particular time, if you want to trigger the build, right? We are going to define the triggers here. Okay, so what are the different options we have while triggering the project? So trigger builds remotely. Okay, so trigger builds remotely means, so through the script if we want to trigger this particular project. Okay, so through the script if we want to trigger this particular project, we can select a trigger builds remotely option. Okay, trigger builds remotely, and here we have to provide the authentication token. So after that only we can trigger the builds remotely, and build after other projects are built. So means here if there is a dependency between the projects, okay, if there is a dependency between the projects, then we can choose this build after other projects are built option. Okay, so for means let us consider we have different builds. Okay, so I'm defining here. So I have the different builds, like I have compilation, okay, and I have testing, I have packaging. Let us consider. Okay, so these are the different projects I have, and there will be dependency between these projects. Okay, so this is a compile project. This is testing, and this is a packaging. Okay, so if there is a dependency, means if the compilation completed, after that only I want to start testing. Okay, if the testing completed, then only I want to start packaging. Okay, so if like this dependency is there, then we are going to choose this build after other projects are built. Okay, so in our case we are going to build test project after compilation. We are going to build packaging after testing project. Like that there will be dependency. Okay, so if there is a dependency between the stages, we are going to define the dependency projects here. Okay, so while defining the dependency, right? So again, so we can see trigger only if build is stable. Means if the current build is, means the pre whatever the projects we are defining here, right? So that project is stable, then only I am going to trigger the next project. Okay, so what is the stable means? Stable means the project has to be successfully completed. Okay, so now in our case, so we are if we are on testing project. Okay, so if we are on testing project, okay, so this testing project depends on compilation. Okay, so here we have to give compile. So testing project depends on the compile project. Okay, so here um, in this compile project, trigger only if build is stable, means if the compile is stable, then only we are going to trigger the test project. Okay, if compile is stable, then only we are going to trigger the test project. That is the meaning here. Okay, and so we have other options also. Trigger even if build is unstable. Unstable means, so actually what is the meaning of stable means, if the last 5 builds are successfully executed, that project we are calling as the stable project. Okay, okay, so unstable means in the last 5 builds, okay, if there is any failure. Okay, unstable means in the last 5 builds if there is any failure, so then that particular project will become unstable project. Okay, so then we have to define the condition here. Okay, trigger only if build is stable, trigger even if build is unstable, trigger even if build fails means which build? Compile build. If the compile build failed, so we are not going to consider. Okay, we are going to trigger the test project. Okay, so that is the meaning here. Okay, so and always trigger even if build is aborted. So if the compile got aborted, okay, so then also we are going to trigger test project. Yes, that is the main. Okay, so we have to choose the required option here. So mostly we are going with the trigger only if build is stable. Means if a compile project is stable, then only we are going to trigger the next project. Okay. So in this way, we can define the dependency between the stages. Okay. So and we have another option. So this is very important. So build periodically means if I want to automate my project, means I don't want to trigger my project manually. Okay, I don't want to trigger my project manually. So I'm going to automate my project. Means on every day 10 a.m. I want to start my project. Okay, I want to build my project. Okay, and on every Monday I want to build my project. Like that. So if there is, if that is the case, right? Okay, means if we are going to repeat the operation, right? In that case, we will go with the build periodically option. Okay, so under build periodically, so we are going to define the schedule, means how frequently we are going to trigger the project. So how we are going to define the schedule? So we are going to define the schedule by using the cron job. Okay, so under build periodically. Okay, so what this build periodically will do? So so depending on the time interval. Okay, so this build periodically is used for repeated builds, for repeated builds. If you want to trigger the builds repeatedly, right? So then we will go with the build periodically. Okay, and here what we are going to do is we are not going to build the project manually. Okay, so the project will be built automatically. Okay, so this is one way of automating the project. So this is one way of automating the project. Okay, so how can we automate? Depending on the time interval. Okay, depending on the time interval, so we can automate the project. Okay, so here what is happening with the build periodically is, so we are going to define the cron job. Okay, so we are going to define the time schedule. So how we are going to define the time schedule? So this cron job will have, okay, the cron job will have different fields. So what are the different fields we have here? So we'll have 5 fields here. So every field we are going to define with star. Okay. So what are these 5 fields means? So these 5 fields represent minutes. Okay. So hours. Okay. So these 5 fields represent, so minutes, hour, day of the month, day of the week. So these are the 5 fields. Okay, so these 5 fields represent minute, hour, day of the month, day of the week. Okay, so means we have to define on which minute, on which hour, on which day, on like that. Okay, on which date we have to trigger the project. Okay, so in this way we have to define the time interval. We have to define the time interval. So if you see here, minute ranges, for the minute we can give values from 0 to 59. For hours we can give values from 0 to 23. For day of the month we'll give the values from 1 to 31. For month we'll give values from 1 to 12. For day of the week we'll give values from 0 to 7. 0 and 7 are for the Sunday. Okay. So in this way, we have to define the cron job syntax. Okay, we have to define the schedule. We have to define the interval. Now, my intention is I want to trigger my project for every 2 minutes. Okay, for every 2 minutes. Then which field I have to change? So this star represent always. Okay, so this is a minute field. Star represent always at every minute like that. Okay, so but my intention is, so I want to trigger my project for every 2 minutes. Then I have to change the first field. I have to change the first field. Similarly, if I want to trigger the project for every 2 hours, then I have to change the second field, hour field. Which is our field? Second field is the hour field. And day of the month. So here I want to trigger my project first on the first of every month. Then I have to define third field. Okay, so like this. So I want to trigger my project on every Sunday. Then I had to define the last field like this, depending on our requirement. So we have to define the cron job syntax. Okay, so if you want to trigger the project for every 2 minutes, how can you define? For every 2 minutes means star by 2. Okay, so there is no dependency on the remaining fields. Okay, star by 2 and star 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 star. What this one represent? What this one represent? Okay, so trigger the project for every 2 minutes. For every 2 minutes. Okay. Similarly, I want to trigger my project for 2 hours. How can you define? Tell me. If I want to trigger my project for every 2 hours, we have to change
Star
the hours
two.
field.
Yeah,
Star
star two.
star by 2, star by 2,
Star that.
star star star. So what this will represent? So trigger the project for every 2 hours.
For every 2 hours.
Okay. Trigger the project for every 2 hours. So like this, we can define. Okay. So this is a build periodically. Okay. So similarly, here while going with the build periodically, right? What is going to happen is, so irrespective of the code changes, the project will be triggered. Whether we have changes in the source code or not, the Jenkins is not going to consider. Okay. So here, irrespective of code changes, project will be triggered because we defined a time interval, right? So depending on the time interval, so the project will be triggered irrespective of the code changes. Okay. So this is one of the way how we can automate the project. Similarly, we have so one more option here. So that is policy. So this pole SCM also, for the pole SCM also, we are going to define the cron job syntax. Okay, so how we defined the schedule for the build periodically, right? In the same way, for pole SCM also, we are going to define the cron job syntax. Okay, so next one is the pole SCM. Okay, so what is this pole SCM will do? So what this build periodic is doing? It is used for repeated builds. Okay, to automate the builds, we can use build periodically. This is one way of automating the project. Irrespective of code changes, project will be triggered. Okay, so project will be triggered depending on the time interval. Schedule, depending on the schedule. Okay, so similarly, we have pole SCM. So pole SCM is also used for the repeated builds. Okay, and this is also one of the way of automating the project. Okay, so this is also one way of automating the project. Okay, so this pole SCM also works similar to the build periodically. Okay, so for pole SCM also we have to define the schedule. Okay, so we have to define the schedule for the policy also. So depending on schedule defined, project will be triggered. Okay, so depending on the schedule defined, project will be triggered if there is code change. That is the difference here. Okay, if there is a code change, then only project will be triggered with policy. So with policy also we are going to define the cron job. Okay, so how we define the cron job in the build periodical, in the same way here also we will define the cron job, but there is no guarantee that at every interval project is going to be triggered. Okay, So there is no guarantee that at every interval project is going to be triggered. So if we define the schedule as like this, let us consider. Okay, so star by 2 star like this I define, means I'm trying to trigger my project for every 2 hours. Okay, I'm trying to trigger my project for every 2 hours. If I go with Polysium, there is no guarantee that for every 2 hours my project will be triggered. So what is the problem here? Why? Because the project will be triggered if there is a code change. Okay, so what this Jenkins will do is, depending on the time interval defined, so this Jenkins will poll our SCM. Okay, Jenkins will poll our SCM, and if there is a code change in the SCM, then project will be triggered. If there is no code change, then project is not going to be triggered. Okay, so that is the difference between build periodically and policy. So any doubts
So,
here?
yes, sir, but over here triggered means deployment.
Okay.
So can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Tell me.
Uh, Over here trigger means deployment.
That is correct. Trigger means
Okay,
deployment, release.
got it.
So this is another way of automating our concept. Okay. So here also no need to bother. No need to bother about the manual trigger. We are not going to trigger manually. We are not going to release manually. It will happen automatically. Okay. So now this build periodically we can define in the lower environments. Okay, this build periodically we can define in the lower environments like dev environment, okay, or SIT environment. Like this in the lower environments we can prefer build periodically. Just we are going to schedule to trigger the project for every 2 hours or for every 5 hours like that. Okay, so because in the lower environment, our dev team will be there. So we'll have different dev team members. So for different features, right? So they will regularly commit the changes. Okay. So within 2 hours or within 3 hours, we will see some commits in the SCM repository. So then the commits will be triggered. Okay. So depending on the time interval defined. Okay. So this build periodically will be we can prefer in the lower environment. The build periodically we can prefer in the lower environment because in the lower environment, dev team will be there and the dev team will take care of the means regularly they will commit some changes, right? So we will see some commits within the 2 hours. Okay, so similarly for QA environment also, so whatever the successful builds we have from the dev environment, that builds will be moved to the QA environment. In the QA environment, what we can do is we can implement build periodically only, but instead of 2 hours or 3 hours, we can change the time interval like 6 hours or 8 hours. For every 6 hours, we are going to trigger the project. For every 8 hours, we are going to trigger the project. Like that, in the QA environment, we can change the time interval. Okay. So in both the cases, we can use a build periodically. No need to bother. Okay. So simply, we are going to define our schedule. And once we define schedule, right? So we are going to get the artifacts from our Jenkins. Okay. So these are the ways how we can automate our project. And one more way here is so if you see GitHub hook trigger for Git SCM polling. So this is another way of automating the project. Okay, so this is another way of automating the project. So in the previous two cases, what we did is so we defined a schedule, right? We define cron job schedule, right? So now I don't want to define cron job schedule. So whenever there is a SCM change, immediately I want to trigger the project. Okay, if that is the case, then we'll go with the webhooks. Okay, so we'll enable the webhooks, and by the webhooks, what is going to happen is no need to define the cron job, no need to define schedule. Okay, so no need to define schedule. Okay, so whenever there is a code change, whenever there is a code change, code change in SEM, immediately project will be triggered. Immediately project will be triggered. Okay, so this is somewhat different compared to the previous two cases. Okay.
The SCM is source code management.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Like GitHub. Okay. So because always we are going to take the code from SCM only, right? From GitHub only we are going to take the code. Always what this Jenkins will do is Jenkins will check the SCM or GitHub. Okay, whether there is any new commit happened, any new push happened. So like that, always it will check our SCM tool. Okay, so whenever there is a new commit happened, immediately Jenkins will trigger the project. This is another way of automating the project. Okay, so these are the three ways. These are the three ways or popular ways for scheduling our project. Okay, so for these methods we can use for to trigger the project. Then we have environment. To set up the environment, we can go with this option. So delete workspace before build starts means so whenever we create project, whenever we build the project, right, whenever we trigger the project, right, so by default some workspace will be created and all the artifacts, everything will be available in that particular workspace for the project. Okay, so if you want to clean up the workspace before the next build, right, we can choose this option. Okay, so then we have use secret text files. If we are trying to add any credentials, okay, credentials like a secret text or secret file, so we can use this option and add timestamps to the console output. Console output is nothing but, so whenever we trigger the project, there will be one console output. We'll see how the console output looks like. So if you want to add the timestamp to the console output, we can choose this option. And inspect build log. So after the build completed, right, if you want to inspect the logs, we can choose this and terminate a build if it's stuck. So sometimes the build is going to stuck, so due to some issues, right? Okay, so in that case, if we choose, right, no need to bother about the track. Okay, so we will define timeout minutes. So after 3 minutes, after 30 minutes, like that. Okay, so if the build is keep on going for 30 minutes, then I can enable this terminate a build if tracks option. Then no need to bother. After 30 minutes, build will be aborted. Okay, so these are the options we have under environment. And next one is the build steps. Okay, so build steps means once we have source code available, so we have to work onto the source code, right? So how can we work on the source code means how to compile the code. Okay, so that thing we'll see under build steps. Okay, so under build steps you can see different options like execute windows batch command. So means if we are using Windows platform, okay, so we can use Windows bash command for execution of the project and execute shell. So if we are using Linux platform, we can go with the execute shell option and invoke ant. Ant is like a maven. Okay, so it is like a maven. So it is a build automation tool. If you want to build by using the ant, we can invoke the Mac, invoke the ant, and okay. Sorry. So invoke Gradle. Gradle also like a build tool. Okay, so we can use Gradle also to perform some activities here and invoke top level Maven. So Maven means if we are using Maven as the build automation tool, we can enable this invoke top level Maven targets and set build status to pending on GitHub commit. So these are the different options we have. So mostly we are going to use execute shell or invoke top level Maven targets. Okay, so if we are going with execute shell, click on this execute shell. So this is the workspace we are seeing here. So this space is similar to our server. Our we have Git bash, right? How the Git bash works in the same way, this space also will work. Okay, so if you go to the Git bash here, I'm using ls command, right? So ls will list the files and the present working directory. It will show on which folder. What is the current path? Okay, who am I? It will show the current user. Okay, so like that, what are the commands we are executing on this git bash, right? So every command we can execute on this workspace also. Okay, so every command we can execute on this workspace also. So I can use pwd, I can use ls, I can use who am I. Okay, so these commands I can use. So every command I can use. So we can get the result of these commands once we build the project, once we trigger the project. Okay, so once we deploy this particular project, we can see the result. So what this pwd will do? So it will show the current working directory. ls will show in the current working directory what are the files we have. That files it will show. Who am I? What this who am I will do? So with which user we are working. Okay, the current working user it will show. So like that we can define all the scripts, linux scripts we can define here. Okay, and then we have post build actions. So post build actions means with the build steps our build is going to be completed. So post build actions are the actions which we are going to perform after the completion of our project. Okay, post build actions are the actions which we are going to perform after the completion of the project, like sending the notifications and archiving the artifacts and triggering the other builds. Okay, so like that. So the actions which we are going to perform after the completion of the current project, that actions we are calling as the post build actions. Okay, so we can see different possible actions here. Archive the artifacts. So once we build our project, right, we are going to get the artifacts. Okay. So if you want to archive the artifacts, we can archive. You can see here archive the artifacts. Build other projects. You see, build other projects means once our current project is completed successfully, if you want to build other projects, we can choose this option. Okay, so in the same way, it means if there is a dependency, okay, if the current project is compile, okay, if the current project is compile, if the compile project is completed, so we can define test project here. Here we can define a test project. So this one represent the next project which we are going to build. Okay, so this is a post build action, right? So after the current build, which project we are going to trigger, that details we have to provide here. Okay, so as usual here also we can see the different conditions. Trigger only if build is stable, or trigger even if build is unstable. So how we saw in the earlier, right? The same case here also you can see the different conditions. Okay, so this is build other projects and publish JUnit test result. So once we performed validated test cases, right? So if you want to publish the test result, we can choose this test option. And like that, email notification we have. So if you want to send the email notification after the completion of our project. Okay, so whether the project got successfully executed or if we face any failures. Okay, so that information if you want to send, so we can send the email notifications also to the respective team members by selecting the email notification option. Okay, so like that, different postable actions you can see here. So these postable actions we can choose depending on our requirement. Okay, so these are the options we can see with the freestyle project. Okay, up to now what we discussed, the options which we can see with the freestyle project. Okay, so out of these options, it is not necessary to select each and every option. So depending on our requirement only, we can choose any option here. Okay, so now you see in the general section I'm not choosing anything here. In the source code management I have chosen none. Okay, so under triggers I am not choosing anything. Under environment I am not choosing anything. So under build steps I have chosen execute shell, because my platform is Linux platform. Okay, my platform is Linux platform, right? So that is the reason why I have chosen execute shell under build steps. So under execute shell, I have given the simple commands. We know the result of this command, right? Okay, so we'll just go with the simple commands. So these are the commands I have given. and try to add date also. I want to know the current timestamp. Okay, so at which the build happened, that timestamp I need. So that's why I added date also. So that's it. I'm not going to do any other changes. Okay, so just to see here, we are not doing any changes except this execute shell, except this execute shell. Okay, so apply, save, apply, save. Okay, now, so if you see here, we did some configuration changes in our project. What configuration changes we did? So that information you can see from the config.xml file. Now again, cat config.xml file, cat config.xml file. You see, so we have given three commands. What are the three commands we have given in our project? We have given under execute shell, we have given present working directory, ls, VMI, and date. So these commands we have given, right? So the same thing we can see from config.xml file. So this is the config.xml file. So under this, so here you can see command, under command option, pwd, ls, VMI, date. So these are the four commands we have given. All the four commands are getting reflected under config.xml file. Okay, so means whatever the changes, configuration changes we are doing on the project level, right? So everything will be captured under config.xml file. So this config.xml file is a project specific. Okay, for every project we will have a separate config.xml file. Okay, so in that config.xml file we can see whatever the configuration changes we did on the project. All the details will be available under config.xml file. Okay, so if you want to take the backup of a project, okay, what is the meaning of backup of a project? Backup of project is nothing but what configuration changes we did in a particular project, that information, right? So if you want to take the backup of a project, simply you can take the backup of config.xml file, that is enough. Okay, if you take the backup of config.xml file, then this config.xml file represent the total project configurations. Okay, total project configurations it will represent. Okay, simply to take the backup of a project, we can take the backup of config.xml file, that is sufficient. Okay, so now now go to the project, go to the dashboard. Here, so any doubts up to now?
No, sir, it's clear.
So do the practice
Last
from
part,
your end
yeah,
also.
yeah. Last part was a bit confusing, but I hope it will be cleared
Yeah,
after seeing the
so
video
here
again.
what we are discussing is we are on the Jenkins home directory. So current working directory, go to the Jenkins home directory. What is the Jenkins home directory? We already discussed, right? Slash where lib Jenkins. This is the Jenkins home directory. Okay.
Okay,
So under Jenkins home directory, you can see number of files. Okay. All
right,
these files folders related to the Jenkins. Now we have one jobs directory. So what this jobs directory will represent is, so always job is nothing but a project. Just remember.
okay,
Okay. So whenever we are calling job, it represents a project. Okay. So all the projects information will be available under jobs directory. So as of now, we have only one project, my project one. Only
right,
one project we have. Okay. So now if you go to the jobs directory, so check ls, you see my project one is there,
right,
the same project we have, whatever we have.
right,
Okay,
right.
so in this particular project we did some configuration changes. We selected
Correct.
execution. Okay, so and
Hmm.
we added some commands. These are the commands we added. The same
Yes.
thing will be reflected under config.xml file. For every project there will be one config.xml file. Go to the project.
Okay.
So under here, you can see config.xml file. It's the
Right.
config.xml file. Okay. So this config.xml file will have all the project related information. So cat config.xml file. You see, so whatever we defined the commands, right? the commands are getting reflected here. PWD, LS, who am I, date, everything is getting reflected. Okay, means so on the UI part in the project, whatever the changes we are doing, everything will be reflected under config.xml file. Okay, so if we want to take the backup of a project, simply we have to take the backup of config.xml file. That is enough. Okay, so if we take the backup of config.xml file, it will represent the complete project configuration. Okay, so that is what we defined here. Now go to the project. So this is the project, right? So go to the project now. So we did configuration changes, and so now we are ready to trigger the project. We are ready to deploy our code. Okay, so here you can see build now option on the left side. You can see build now option. So build now, whenever we click on build now, the project will be triggered. Okay, so you can see the build history. So no builds as of now, we don't have any builds. If you have any previous builds, that build history will be available under this page. Okay, now try to trigger the project. Click on build now. Build scheduled. Okay, so build got scheduled. You see, build completed here. So here, green tick mark represent successful completion of the build. Okay, successful completion of the build. So for every build, there will be one console output. Okay, so if you click on this green tick mark, you can see the console output. So for whether the build is a success or build got failed, whatever the result, if you want to check the console output, so just click on that green tick mark or red cross mark. Okay, so we can see the console output. So in the console output, we'll get, so if the build got failed, right? So we'll see what is the reason for failure. Okay, so it is like a log. Okay, mostly we'll get the information for the failure. Okay, right here. Is it? So start, this is the console output. So here green represent it is successfully executed, and here started by the user, means the admin user started the build. Okay, so
Okay.
this one represent admin user started the build, and building in workspace. So this is very important. Okay, so whenever we trigger the project, so for that particular project, one workspace will be created under Jenkins home directory. So you see, so under Jenkins home directory, okay, so earlier there will not be any workspace. Okay, so there will not be any workspace. So once we trigger the project, after that only workspace will be created. So what is the location of the workspace? The default location of the workspace is valid
Valid
Jenkins,
Jenkins.
valid Jenkins. Under valid Jenkins, one folder with workspace will be created. Okay, so under workspace folder, the project name, with the project name, one directory will be created. So this is the workspace for the current project. Okay, so for every project there will be a separate workspace created once we build the project. Okay, now for the current project, this is the workspace. You can see the workspace here. So now go to the server. So here where we are under my project one, right? So ls come. So go to the jobs directory, even come out of the jobs directory. So check ls. You see, so earlier there was no workspace directory. Now we can see workspace directory. Okay, so now go to the workspace directory. So go to the workspace directory. Under workspace directory, you see again the folder with project name created. Now go to the folder, my project one. Now check the current working directory. So this is the workspace for our project. Okay, so valid Jenkins workspace, my project one. That is the thing it is telling. So building in workspace, valid Jenkins workspace, my project one. This the this is like a home directory for our project. Okay, so this is like a home directory for our project. Okay, so after this, so whatever the commands we have given, that commands will be executed. What are the commands we have given? pwd, ls, wmi, date. So these commands we have given, right? You see, pwd, what is telling? Valid Jenkins workspace, my project one. This is the current working directory. This is the home directory for our project. Okay, ls. So under home directory, check ls. Nothing is there. Nothing is there. So that is the reason why ls is not giving any result here. And who am I? Jenkins.
Jenkins.
Okay. But if you check who am I, here it is showing root, because we are on the server we are working with root user, but on the Jenkins UI every command will be executed with Jenkins user only. Okay, so on Jenkins UI every command will be executed with Jenkins UI only. That is the reason why it is showing who am I as Jenkins. Okay, so then we have given date command, right? So you see date, it is current, it is showing the current UTC timestamp. Okay, so this is how we can create a simple project. And so we'll discuss about this Jenkins, why it is showing Jenkins as the current user. So these things we'll discuss in the coming sessions. And now go to the dashboard. You can see the more information about the project on the dashboard now. So in your organization, if you have access to the Jenkins, just check the Jenkins dashboard. It will be similar how we are seeing here, right? In the same way you can see here. The dashboard will be same. It will looks similar in your organization also. Okay. So you see here we are getting the summary of our project. So status is successfully executed, and health condition is stable, build is stable. So we already discussed, right? Stable build, unstable build. Okay, so build stability is 100% build stability we have. And last success, when the last success build happened, so 5 minutes 24 seconds ago, build one is the successful build we have. So how much time it has taken to complete the build? It has taken 13 seconds, 0.13 seconds to complete the build, like this. So for every project, we'll see the summary on the dashboard. If we have 10 projects, all the 10 projects summary we can see here. Okay.